Thank you for joining us today for our How to Be a Peer Reviewer webinar presented by Sage Publishing. Today we'll specifically be focused on how to be a peer reviewer for the Sage Open Journal. So today's presentation will be split into two parts. In the first part, you'll hear from two of my colleagues at Sage about how to be an effective peer reviewer, and they'll walk us through the process of peer review from start to finish. We hope this will take around 20 minutes and followed by a Q&A session or question and answer session where we'll be joined by some other experts from Sage Open. So in order to prepare for this, please drop your questions in the chat. You'll see the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. While looking through these, if you see any that are particularly important or interesting, please do like them. We'll start with those questions that have the most likes at the end of the call. For any specific questions, you can always email the journal directly at sageopen@sagepub.com. So now I want to present our team. Oops, excuse me. So first, I'm Sean Scarsbrick, a marketing manager on the author marketing team. I'm based out of New York. I'm passionate about helping reviewers, especially those at the early stages of their career, to navigate the peer review process with ease and expertise. Bailey Bauman is an executive editor on the Open Access Journals team at Sage Publishing in Thousand Oaks, California. She manages Sage Open, which is an open access mega journal spanning the humanities, social sciences, and behavioral sciences. She holds a BA from Georgetown University in Classics and an MS from the University of Southern California in Geographic Information Science and Technology. She values research integrity and our lasting impact on the academic record. Next, Sarah Parker is a managing editor on the Open Access Journals team at Sage Publishing. She manages Sage Open and is a member of Sage's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion group that focuses on content and language. She earned a BA in Creative Writing and Spanish from the University of Arizona and a publishing certificate from Arizona State University. She's currently getting her master's in English from Northern English from Northern Arizona University. And I'm going to pass it over to Bailey and Sarah now.
I am going to be introducing Eve Rao Hodges. She is an associate managing editor on Sage Open based in London. Prior to joining Sage, she worked in academic books and legal publishing. She holds a BA in history from Oxford University and an MA in early modern history from King's College London.
And lastly, we have Mansi Negi, who serves as a peer review associate for Sage Open at Sage India. She holds a bachelor's degree in life sciences from H&B Garhwal University, Srinagar. Her responsibilities include managing submissions and fostering seamless communication among authors, reviewers, and article editors. Next slide, please, Sean. And then Sage Open is a peer-reviewed gold open access mega journal that spans the humanities, behavioral sciences, and social sciences. Sage Open is both the largest and the most read journal within Sage's open access program. Over to you, Eve.
Okay, thanks, Bailey. I'd like to start with a definition of peer review. During peer review, scholars evaluate the quality of new research to ensure that the work is rigorous, coherent, builds on previous findings, and adds to what is already known. Peer review is an integral part of publishing research and essential to ensuring the quality of research published and added to the academic record. In this presentation, we're going to talk about the basic principles of reviewing articles and how to sign up to review for Sage Open. Okay, I'm going to cover the benefits of reviewing. So the most significant benefit of getting involved in peer review is the service you would provide to your field. Each time someone peer reviews, they are directly helping to improve the quality of the article, offering the author new insights into their research methods and results, and giving the opinions of fellow experts that can provide support and further insights. It is also a way to keep up with new directions in the field and could be a gateway to a position on Sage Open's editorial board or as a section editor. Additionally, there are benefits to reviewing and ways in which a reviewer can receive recognition. This includes via Publons and ORCID, where a reviewer can keep a record of publications and show which journals you review for. We can also prepare reviewer certificates, which can demonstrate professional development experience on your CV. Sage also offers some additional benefits, including a 25% discount on Sage books and free access to ebook products and Sage journals for 60 days. More information on these benefits can be found at the reviewer rewards link listed on the slide, and we will share these slides after the presentation. This slide shows a map of what the overall peer review process looks like on Sage Open and highlights the core role peer reviewers have. After a paper is submitted, it is checked for compliance with our journal guidelines, checked for plagiarism, and we check whether it fits our aims and scope. If it passes these checks, it is sent to peer reviewers. In most cases, reviewers are matched to a paper based on keywords provided in the paper, keywords provided by the reviewer if they've created a reviewer account, or to keywords in articles the reviewer has authored. Reviewers are invited to review once they accept the invitation, they will have access to the paper in their reviewer center in our peer review platform, SageTrack. Once reviewers have assessed the paper and prepared comments to the editor and authors, they then make a recommendation of revision, reject, or accept to the editor. The editor will then make a final decision based on the recommendations from reviewers. So there are sometimes it's best to decline an invitation to review. If you do not have the expertise to review the article you're invited to review, please let us know that you were invited in error. Also, let us know if you are still working towards your degree in a particular field, and if you're not yet ready to review articles. Another time you might decline to review is when you do not have the time and you can't commit to a specific extension. But if you do have a specific extension in mind, it's worth letting us know before declining. Lastly, you should decline to review if you have a personal conflict of interest with the research or the authors that would prevent you from delivering an impartial review. Examples of this include maybe like a financial stake in the research or a strong similarity to your own forthcoming research. If you feel that there could be a potential conflict of interest, or you feel uncomfortable providing a review because you're too close to the topic, or you feel you may be tempted to use or cite the research before it's published, please just let us know in an email. So this conversation ties into the larger issue of reviewer ethics, which Mansi will cover on the next slide.
Thanks, Eve. On Sage Open, we use double anonymized peer review. This means the author do not know who the reviewers are, and the reviewers do not know who the authors are. Double anonymized peer review helps us ensure that authors are not getting an unfair advantage or disadvantage because of who they are, and that reviewers are comfortable providing honest feedback. If you learn of the author's identities when reviewing for Sage Open, for example, if the manuscript was not fully anonymized, let the editor know right away. Mention of learning the author's identities raises a particular conflict of interest for you as a reviewer. You as a reviewer will have access to unpublished research, and it is important to keep the content of that research confidential. If the only exception is if you're working on a collaborative review with a colleague, which is something you should ask us about before agreeing to review. Lastly, the reviews recommended by authors are generally not allowed. Next, we are going to talk about the evaluation criteria a reviewer should keep in mind. On Sage Open, the phrase "research done well" is used to describe our bar for publication. Sage Open is looking for discrete, coherent contribution to the academic record in the social sciences that have sufficient methodological rigor to serve as sound building blocks for future research. We look for research that contributes to the academic record in a way that allows other scholars to connect that research to their own work and build on it. We care more about the clarity and quality of the contribution an article makes than we do the size of that contribution. Sage Open evaluates manuscripts based on how the research was conducted and reported. We'll talk about how to identify research done well in the next few slides. When you first read a manuscript, there are characteristics of the writing and structure that you may notice immediately, such as whether the authors used an academic writing style. For example, whether they wrote in an appropriate and consistent tone, person, and tense, whether they were as specific as possible and avoided generalization, and whether they avoided discipline-specific jargon. Though we are not looking for you to copy edit, we appreciate general comments on language quality. Again, you don't need to copy edit, but if you encounter enough issues to make the article difficult to read, please let us know. Please also let us know if you have trouble following the article. because it lacks cohesiveness or is missing key sections. Some specific concerns might include the organization and overall flow of the manuscript, clearly stated research questions and findings, and an absence of extraneous material. Lastly, we expect bias-free, inclusive language that is appropriate for a global audience. Authors should take care when writing about gender, age, disability, neurodiversity, race, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, and religion. They should be sensitive to labels and appropriately specific. They should keep in mind that people have many identities and that one shared identity does not necessarily mean shared experiences. Bias-free, inclusive research goes beyond word choice and extends to the assumption made by the researcher and the intention and design of the study. For example, the sampling. If you have concern with any of this, please let us know in your review. Over to you, Eve.
So reporting guidelines exist for many study types and should be followed by authors when preparing an article. We expect research to have appropriate ties to the literature. If you notice material that is missing from the literature review and would give necessary context to the study, please let us know. For literature reviews and discussion sections, only suggest your own articles or colleagues' articles if you have a legitimate reason for recommending them, and please state the reasons for including them. Alternatively, you can simply suggest to authors that they need to update their literature with more relevant or recent articles, or with more global literature as appropriate. Lastly, please mention any issues with the figures and tables. As a reviewer, you should be able to easily read any figures, and they should include a title and be mentioned in the paper. So earlier we spoke about reviewer ethics. This slide is about the ethical guidelines the authors should have followed when performing their study and writing their paper. As a reviewer, you should feel free to ask the authors questions in your review and let the editor know if you have any concerns with the research ethics of the article you're reviewing. Specifically, feel free to ask for more details on how informed consent was obtained and who gave ethical approval. If a reviewer has concerns about the privacy of the study participants, they should let us know in their report. And this is especially important for Sage Open reviewers, which has a wider reach than printed or paywalled journals. Lastly, let the editor know if a reviewer suspects any data or image manipulation. For example, a p-value that is too perfect or standard error bars that are just too consistent. Any concerns like these should be raised to the Sage Open editorial team.
When looking at the methods and data analysis, there are a number of key items to focus on. First, are there any flaws in the study design? Are there any clear concern with the way in which the study was conducted? Is the study design consistent with the similar studies in the field? Do the results and conclusions seem appropriate for the kind of study conducted? Is the material and method sections descriptive enough so that the study could be reproduced? Are the statistical techniques relevant to the study, and are they the standard for that kind of study? And are the materials and methods used for the study appropriate for the research questions being addressed? Many of the questions raised in analyzing the materials and methods section flow over into the results, discussions, and conclusion sections. Common questions to think about when reviewing these sections include: are the results presented in a way that best emphasizes that the findings? Are these sections free of unsupported generalization of assumptions? Are the conclusions appropriate for the study? And are there appropriate limitation and directions for future research? Also consider big picture questions. Did the study accomplish what it set out to do? Did the author follow their original hypothesis? Did they follow their own methods, and does this follow through the stated conclusions? Some studies may have null or negative findings. Do not recommend to reject a paper just because it didn't have positive results. Breaking a review down into sections that match the structure of the paper can help ensure you cover all parts of the manuscript and provide thorough feedbacks for the authors.
So to summarize, a good review report should include an assessment of the quality of the research method, data, and images. It should be written so that it is easy to read and understand. The report should have substantial comments presented in a logical order, an overview of the paper's suitability for publication, any specific edits that are needed, and should highlight strong points alongside weaker points in the manuscript. If a manuscript is very high quality and looks ready to be accepted, do not just say that in the review report. Include the reasons why the manuscript is good and focus on what it is about the methods, results, or conclusions that are good and why the overall quality of the manuscript means it doesn't need revision. The tone of a review should be helpful, positive, and constructive. Keep in mind that authors may not be native English speakers. Avoid using strong punctuation like exclamation points or words in all caps, as this can make a review appear aggressive. Review comments are seen by both editors and authors, so be mindful of word choice and phrasing. To be invited again by an editor, writing a well thought out review goes a long way. Comments to authors can be organized as major and minor comments in SageTrack. Major comments are generally suggestions or questions for the authors that will require further data analysis or a significant amount of rewriting. Minor comments are generally straightforward edits or suggestions that can be addressed quickly. Do comment on the readability of the paper, but keep in mind that this is something that can be fixed later with copy editing. There is also the option to send separate comments to the editor, so take advantage of this to give more candid or high-level feedback. For example, comments around scope or appropriateness of the study questions. So what to avoid? Some of the things that should be avoided in a review include a lack of detail, a lack of justification for the recommendation. For example, saying accept without explaining why. A recommendation that doesn't match the comments, for example, saying accept while also suggesting heavy edits. Unnecessarily descriptive comments that don't evaluate content. For example, comments that simply summarize the article. Asking authors to cite your work without justification. An overly negative or even aggressive tone. Try instead to focus on the constructive aspects of the message you want to get across. And finally, please do not upload manuscripts to AI tools or use generative AI to write your reports.
So now that you know what to look for when peer reviewing, how do you volunteer to review for Sage Open? To volunteer to review for Sage Open, create an account on Sage Open's peer review site on SageTrack. Make sure a regularly checked email address is used. Institutional email addresses are preferred. Create or add an ORCID ID. Include your full affiliation. Specify your degree and qualification and choose an appropriate salutation. Also make sure strong keywords that best illustrate your research expertise are included. Examples of good keywords and those to avoid are shown on the right. Good keywords are generally those that are descriptive but not overly specific. You can choose keywords from the taxonomy shown on the left, and you can also fill out your own keywords in the boxes on right. These keywords will help us judge your suitability for papers. For anyone who would like to learn even more about peer review, Sage offers a number of additional resources on the Sage Journal Review Gateway. Reviewers will find a video on how to become a peer reviewer, as well as a peer review ethics video with information about ethics and reviewer responsibilities. Reviewers can also visit the Committee of Publication Ethics website to read their suggested best practices for peer reviewing, called the COPE Ethical Guidelines. Lastly, we would like to thank reviewers for taking the time to support fellow researchers. Reviewing is a critical process, and reviewers help to protect the integrity of the academic record, improve the work they review, and bring higher standards of research and scholarly communication.
So thank you so much, Even Monsi, for your presentation. Before we move on to the Q&A, I wanted to flag that at Sage, we have a dedicated gateway that houses all of our peer review resources. If you have any questions about where to begin, please do consult that. And I also recommend that everyone now, as we're going into the Q&A portion, submit any questions you do have into the Q&A function, and feel free to like any questions there that you also think should be addressed. And now I'll pass it over to Bailey and Sarah to begin with that portion of our webinar.
Thanks. I'd like to start with expanding on something that came up and was answered in the chat during the presentation. So at submission, we keep our language checks pretty light. We're mostly looking just to make sure that we can understand what's happening in the article and that peer reviewers could as well. As was mentioned in the presentation, we're not looking for you to copy edit. We do have some light copy editing happening after acceptance. But if you're trying to read an article and you're like, I don't really understand what's happening here, there are so many language errors, feel free to give us that feedback in your review. We don't always get it right, and we try to err on the side of caution. We want to be mindful that not everyone speaks English as their first language, and we don't want to create unnecessary barriers for people. But we might have gone too easy on an article, and feel free to flag that to us if the language needs further work before you can give it a good review. The other thing that's come up a couple of times are specific ethics guidelines. We are a pretty big interdisciplinary journal, so we don't hold particular articles to everyone's ethics guidelines, regardless of discipline. We are tightening our requirements a little bit, and there will be more to come in the next couple of months for the journal standards as a whole. But currently, we're not holding all of our authors to one set of ethical guidelines. We're kind of evaluating each article on its own terms. So we'll see what kind of research was done, whether there were human subjects, what ethical approvals they got, what kinds of risks were involved. And we ask our reviewers about this as well. Like, is this appropriate for the kind of study that was done? Were the authors appropriately cautious given what they were doing? So it's more of a case by case for now, but I absolutely appreciate the feedback on different guidelines we might be enforcing. I'm gonna pass it over to Sarah to maybe take another question. Do you have any in mind?
I am seeing some questions on similar types of articles. So if there's a really big similarity to something else that's been published, or if there seems to be an overlap, this is something that we would like you to let us know. There tends to be a lot of similar research, so this may be okay. We do follow COPE guidelines, so this is usually if like the hypotheses are different, if the methods are different, if the conclusions are different, some of that may be fine. But if you're seeing a really big overlap, that's a really important thing for us to know from you as a reviewer. So please do mention in the comments, or if you are trying to decide if you want to review or not, please let us know if you're like, I'm not going to review this. It seems too similar to other work that's out there. This really helps us get through articles at an earlier stage, or to do further investigation. So this is really great information for us.
I'm just clarifying that if there if there are further language issues that you find during peer review, let us know and we'll ask the authors to revise. Just typing that now. Multitasking.
Thanks, Bailey and
Um,
Sarah.
I'm seeing a few questions. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
I'm seeing a few questions about PhD students reviewing. We do have a process for this. You would have to have your supervisor kind of co-sign your review and give you feedback on it. But we do have a form for this. We do allow this on occasion, and it's an important way for PhD students to learn how to do peer review. So yes, we do allow it. Feel free, but do let us know that you're a PhD student and that your professor is helping you with your peer review. And you can email us about that particular article. So yes, but let us know. And master's degree holders can become peer reviewers depending on the discipline.
And just to kind of latch onto that one a little bit, Bailey. So some other questions have come up about requirements. So you've talked about the educational requirements. Is there anything else that a potential reviewer needs to have before they sign up?
Could you give an example of what you were thinking?
Any sort of, we've talked a little bit about the subject area expertise. Is there anything, does someone need to have published or written an article before they become a reviewer?
Not necessarily, although that tends to be how we find people. Unless they've joined our reviewer pool and given us specific keywords, we do tend to look up suitable reviewers based on what else they've published, or what else they've reviewed for us. I would say time is important. Being able to give the review an appropriate amount of time, no matter what your level of experience with peer reviewing is. Really being able to sit with the article, give the authors good feedback, constructive feedback. That's so important. Do you want to add anything, Sarah, or even Muncie?
I was actually going to add, I'm seeing some other things in the chat based off of like how do we find the reviewers, or how soon would you get a review? All of this depends on matches to papers that are submitted to the journal. So if a paper is submitted on a topic that you're an expert in, then obviously you're more likely to get a review invitation for us. So when you go to our website and make your account, make your profile, all of those sorts of things, putting in specific keywords is really important. This is a really good way for us to find matches. So if you're in education, for example, putting in education as a keyword is helpful, but putting in your type of education. So if you're in special education or music education, that's going to help us connect you to articles that are in your area of expertise. And so this is really important for how we're matching people, how you can get sent articles to review.
Trying to pick which question. There's so many good ones. There's another question about like the similarity of research that we allow. Similar, if is it okay if it has similar content and flow, but the parent materials changed? It's variable. One thing we want to be careful of is not making it seem like there's more research published on a topic than there really is, that more studies have been performed on something than there really are. And that's something that a phenomenon called piecemeal publication can perpetuate. It makes it seem like there's a ton of research on something, but really it's just researchers splitting research into multiple articles to have more publications. And it's something that we need to be careful of, that we're not encouraging. So it depends on like how similar it is. We're kind of looking at, we're focusing more on that, like what study was performed for each article, and is it just another report on a very similar study or the same exact study? Have the results or methods changed at all? Are the conclusions the same as something that's already been published? So I think content and flow of the article, it's okay if it's similar, but what's actually being described, particularly the methods, the conclusions, we're looking for similarity there. We tend to check for this sort of thing before the article gets to reviewers, but we don't catch everything. So if you're noticing something that's a little bit too similar to you, flag it to us and we'll look at it more closely. And word limit is strict. 10,000 words is a lot. And any more than that, and we're putting an unfair burden on peer reviewers and on production. So we do tend to hold people to 10,000 words.
I'm seeing a really great question about reviewing the statistics in an article. This is something that we would want reviewers to look at, if at all possible. Sometimes because we get interdisciplinary research, you may fit one part of the article, but not another part of the article. So we would want you to tell us that in your review or when you agree to review. So if you do mostly qualitative research and the statistics are beyond your expertise, please let us know that. We do try and get a good balance of reviewers so that we would then find someone who's an expert in statistics to look at that part of the article. But if you can at all, we would very much like you to be able to do so. This is something that the more people who look at it, the better peer review that we're going to get, the better the article will be in the end.
It's not a problem if you're already a reviewer for another journal. That's okay. Again, it's just about your time. So if you're finding that you're compromising the quality of your peer review because you've overcommitted to be a peer reviewer or with your other professional commitments, definitely let us know that you're not able to complete that review anymore. That's okay with us. We'd rather find someone who has time to really go through the article carefully. So it's not a problem for us if you're already reviewing for another journal, as long as you have the time.
I see another great question about the references. We do want authors to have references and evidence to support any claims. If you're seeing really big claims or assumptions or things that aren't supported, we would very much like you to point that out in your review. This is really important information that we can't just make blanket statements about a whole country or a whole religion or anything like that. We would want this to be backed up by the previous literature. So if you're noticing that in a manuscript that you're reviewing, definitely put that in your review comments. We don't expect you to go through every single reference. That would be so time consuming. But if you're noticing anything that's sort of weird or that would need more support, these are really important comments for us.
Okay, I found a good one. So this one's about article processing charges. So Sage Open is a gold open access journal. That means it's free for anyone to read any of our articles, no matter where they are, what library subscriptions they have access to. It allows research to be more impactful and just reach a broader audience. That does mean that the costs for publishing go to the authors, their institutions, their grants. We do consider discounts on a case-by-case basis, and a lot of authors are eligible for them through their institutions. But we do have an article processing charge for Sage Open. If you have specific concerns about a particular article you submitted, email us directly and we'll address it with you. But we do have an article processing charge. That is not the same as vanity publishing. We do very high quality peer review and go to the trouble of making sure that our peer reviewers are trained and giving us feedback that we can use to help our authors improve their work and make sure that we're publishing quality research. So it's not vanity publishing, but we do have an article processing charge for authors, and we do our best to make sure we are applying it fairly. Oh, I should mention that we're also a member of Research for Life. So depending on where you are in the world, you might already be eligible for a waiver for your article. Yeah, that was a good question, though. Thank you for asking that.
I'm also seeing some questions about geography. So if the author is from the same place as the reviewer, we do conflicts of interest checks. So you can't be from the same university if you are very close to each other, or if you have any sort of conflict of interest. If you think you know the author, then we would ask you to disclose that. This is double anonymized, so you shouldn't know who the author is and the author shouldn't know who the reviewer is. But if you do, you're familiar with their research, please let us know. That is a conflict of interest. Which is why we also don't do from the same university. But if you're from the same country, countries are large places, that generally is fine. We are a global journal, so we do try and get authors from around the world, reviewers from around the world. We usually like to have people who are like in-group experts and out-group experts, depending on the topic. So you may have someone from the same country if it's a geographically based manuscript. And then we may have someone from outside of that helps catch assumptions, things like that. So this is really important for us, but we don't have any limits on reviewers. If you're from a certain country, that doesn't mean you wouldn't get invited to review. We have reviewers from everywhere around the world.
I feel like we're the one that you want us to give some time to just flag it. There's one I just saw and it moved. We're getting a lot of questions about like the minimum requirements to be a reviewer. If you're not sure, feel free to join our reviewer pool. Just tell us what your qualifications are and add keywords, even though it's been mentioned in the chat that adding keywords is really hard. Do your best, add good keywords, explain your credentials as best you can, give us your contact information, your availability, and we'll reach out to you if we find a paper that matches you. And if you're a PhD candidate and you would like to co-review, let us know. If you receive an invitation and you want to have a co-review with your professor, or if you're joining our reviewer pool and you don't have a PhD yet, feel free to exclude that from your profile for now and then add it later.
Sean has flagged an interesting one. If we have reviewed a manuscript and recommend edits before accepting, would we be able to review the second version of the manuscript? This is a great question. We do try and go back to reviewers if there seems to be a need for more edits on a second version or third version of the manuscript. So when you're filling out your review, there is a question that you can answer that says, I'd be willing to review a revision of this manuscript. It's really helpful to have some sort of consistency as the manuscript moves through peer review. And since you've already looked at it, you can see if changes have been made, if maybe new problems were introduced, or if you're noticing something new because something else has been fixed. So maybe the language was really difficult to read in the first version. It's been improved, and now you're like, oh, I can see there's something else. So we do try and do that whenever possible.
Can I
so
jump
many
in?
good questions. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
I've got an interesting one here. So today I hope the people feel really energetic after the call, and directly after this call today, they're going to go to the Sage Open platform and they're going to sign up to be a reviewer. When could they expect? Like when would somebody expect to be assigned a manuscript to review? What is the typical time span, or is it, variable?
It's going to be variable. It depends on how soon it takes for us to find an article that's a good match for you. We have a pretty good size reviewer pool as well. So yeah, there's no particular timeline. And if you happen to get an invitation to review just as you become unavailable, it's okay. We'll ask you again later. I'm seeing some examples of keywords that people are putting in the chat. One thing that's helpful to consider is like giving a keyword on the kinds of methods you prefer in an article. We have a lot of interdisciplinary papers, so we'll see a topic that might be a good fit for you. But if the way the authors are going about the research is totally unlike anything you've reviewed or written before, we want to make sure we're not giving you anything like that. So feel free to include methods in your keywords as well. But these are great examples of keywords. Thank you.
One thing I wanted to flag, and I'm sorry, this kind of cuts into the middle of the Q&A. We'll jump back, but I've seen a number of questions pop through about getting credit for joining today, and I just wanted to flag that to everyone joining, I'll send over a certificate of attendance to you. For those attending live, please feel free to reach out to me. If you need it personalized for your institution or anything like that, I'm happy to facilitate that. We'll also send over a slide deck so you'll be able to review all of this and a recording, as well as some of the links that we're sharing today. So the most important one perhaps being that information on how to actually sign up as a reviewer.
Oh yeah, I put that link in the chat a couple of times to our how to join our reviewer pool page. I saw a question here about what kind of rubrics do we use for peer review? So when you're a peer reviewer for Sage Open, you'll have a specific reviewer evaluation form. It'll ask you questions about the quality of different aspects of the manuscript, maybe the language quality, the quality of the literature review, the study design, the conclusion, the methods. And so you'll rate each of those, and then you'll have two free text boxes. One will be for confidential comments to the editor. So we're looking for you to tell us like how well you think the manuscript accomplished what it set out to do, whether it was clear what it was even trying to do, whether the methods supported the methods were appropriate for the kind of study this was, the kind of data they used, the kinds of questions they were trying to answer, that sort of thing. And then for the authors, you have another free text box where you could give them specific comments. We're looking for you to break out major and minor issues. So there is a rubric, but there's also kind of a free text option. And then you also have the option to tell us how well you thought you were matched to the article. I think we do a scale of 1 to 5. That's a new question we're trying out. So if you encounter it, please do answer it. It'll let us know, I guess, whether we need to invite more reviewers for that article. And it gives us good feedback on how well we're doing matching you to articles.
Thanks,
I think
Bailey.
this ties in well with sorry, Sean. I think this ties in well with some of what I've been seeing around ethics and who's checking for ethics within a manuscript, if we're checking for AI. So in terms of ethics, this is a full team end-to-end effort. So we do some initial screening for various ethics things. We use Authenticate. So that's helping look for too much similarity to previously published papers. It also has some some other features to help us see what else is going on in the article. We're doing scope checks, we're doing all of those types of things. A lot of the scope checks also include ethics, like was there approval for the study? Do the participants seem like they were in a safe environment? Things like that. But as a reviewer, we also really rely on you to tell us if something just like isn't seeming right about the article. So if you have concerns about the participants, if you have concerns about maybe manipulated data or manipulated images, the more eyes that we have on a manuscript, the better that we can do at making sure that we're only publishing good ethical research. So this is done by Sage staff as well as by our peer reviewers. The more that we can look at it, the better. In terms of AI, this is very difficult to do. This is something that everyone is trying to build tools and detectors. They're not perfect. Any of the tools are not perfect, and people also are not perfect. So we do our best to look at these types of things. Any AI that is used should be disclosed by the authors. That doesn't always happen. We do our best to detect it. For you as a reviewer, please do not use AI to create your comments. This is really, really important. We can't upload manuscripts into an AI tool. We don't want you to use it to write your comments. It's really important that we get your understanding of the manuscript and your specific comments, and not something that's gone through an algorithm or some sort of technology tool.
There was a specific question about AI, and it has to do with whether whether authors used AI to respond to reviewer comments. Yeah, don't if you get the sense that something you're reading was written by AI, whether it's the manuscript or the author's responses, do let us know. Like Sarah said, the tools we have for detecting AI aren't perfect, and sometimes we just rely on ourselves to know that that looks a little bit like ChatGPT. We should look into it a little bit further. So if you get the sense that something was AI generated that shouldn't have been, flag it to us and we'll investigate. Definitely don't put the text into a AI detector. We're trying to protect that kind of information during peer review. So yeah, you don't have to reject the article. It's not on you to say for sure whether it's AI or not, but do flag it to us.
Thanks, Bailey. I did see one question that came through that I thought was really interesting. So kind of tags on to the last question I asked about, being really engaging. You just sign up and you want to review. What can somebody do as a potential reviewer to kind of increase the chance that they will be selected to review an article? Is there anything that they can do to improve their profile or anything like that on the back end that might increase their chances of being selected to review?
I feel like we keep saying keywords.
The more
Gosh.
keywords and the more specific the keywords, the more likely you are to get matched to an article in your area. This is really helpful for us to, there are so many topics and so much within an interdisciplinary journal like Sage Open. So the more that you can help us out, the more that you're likely to get a manuscript to review. I think it's also important to note that we don't want to overburden our reviewers. We know you're getting asked to review by so many places. And so we try and not send too many reviews to the same people over and over. That helps make sure that we're not burning out reviewers and helps make sure that we're getting the right reviewers to the right papers. So there's not necessarily anything that you can do to get more and more and more. It's more just if you're the right match.
If you do get an invitation to review for us and it's not a good fit for you, you have options when you're responding. So you can decline and say, it's out of my field, or this article isn't very good. The abstract looks like it's a low quality article. That would also be helpful for us and let us know that you're still an engaged, interested reviewer, even if we've incorrectly matched you to an article. If you're actually, if you're giving us a response and a little bit of feedback about the article, rather than just not responding, which again, people get busy, which is fine. But if that happens too many times, we might just assume you're too busy to review. So yeah, if you can, when you're declining an invitation to review, make sure to click a specific reason in that email so we know you're still out there and interested in reviewing for us.
Thank you both. Another question that I think is really interesting is, do reviewers receive any feedback for the quality of their reviews? How do they know that they've done a good job, or how do they know what areas to improve on?
That's a great question.
I feel like we don't do that enough.
Yeah, this is an area that certainly could be better because there's so many reviewers on so many papers. That would be extremely time consuming. But there are some tools out there that can ask for feedback. So we do get those occasionally. I think if you get another manuscript to review, you know that the first one probably went well. Um, you can also always email us directly if you're needing some sort of quality assessment for maybe your institution, something like that, especially if you're a PhD student looking to get your degree, this may be necessary for you. We also do, just to go along with that, there were some questions that were kind of related in terms of how they can receive credit. So when you're filling out your review, you can mark that you want to get credit through Publons, which is now through Web of Science. You can also attach it to your ORCID. And then we do reviewer certificates upon request. So you do need to email us specifically if you need like a certificate for your institution on Sage letterhead sort of situation.
Just reading through the questions. We don't have a minimum length for preferred articles. Have we addressed that yet? I know we addressed
No.
maximum length. Okay, I'll take this one then. We don't have a minimum length, but we're mostly looking to make sure that the article has all of the pieces of a research paper. So if the article's too short, it might also be missing something important like a literature review, conclusions. So yeah, if you're reading an article and it's a little bit short, see if it has all of the elements that you would think a complete research paper would need. So we're not just looking at word count, we're kind of looking at yeah, the different pieces of that argument and whether it seems complete. There's another one. Are you saying AI is acceptable in writing an article? Which it's complicated. I think I might need Sarah's help with this one too, but we can put Sage's AI policy in the chat. We require authors to disclose if they've used AI and be very specific about how it was used, what kind of AI tool, what kind of sources that AI had. And it's pretty new in publishing. We generally the kind of AI that we would be worried about is we would want you to flag to us as reviewers if there's just some authors used AI to write a whole section of their article and didn't disclose that to us. It wasn't used as part of like the methods. That could be happening. We've seen it with some other publishers. So if you're noticing something that the writing just doesn't look right, it's been a while since there was something cited, feel free to mention that to us. That's the kind of, I think, like non-disclosed AI use is what we're most concerned about right now. And I think we'll see how it looks when we get articles that do disclose that they're using AI and potentially use it well. I think that's still something we're figuring out. And we don't want to say no to that without seeing what those articles look like. I can put the Sage AI policy in the chat.
I think just to add on to that quickly is we want articles to be reproducible. So this kind of goes back to what our contribution is. We don't need a significant contribution, but it should be adding to the field in some way. So that could be that it's a replication study, that it's a null result study, a negative result study, anything like that, where AI can be difficult, or if you're seeing something that just doesn't seem right, it could be that we wouldn't be able to, another researcher wouldn't be able to reproduce that study. So we don't know what their limitations were. We don't know what their inclusion and exclusion criteria were. If you're seeing anything like that, that's really important to flag, because either they just didn't include that in their methods and their analysis, or that could be a sign that it was AI and another researcher wouldn't be able to verify their results.
I found another AI question, so I'll put the AI link there. Yes, it should be disclosed if AI is used at all in the writing of the article, and the way the research was conducted. Like Sarah said, it's a lot to do with reproducibility. I'll also post the link again to what kinds of credits reviewers get, or the benefits of peer review. Currently, we are not paying reviewers, but we do acknowledge the time we receive from reviewers in other ways. And there's a question here about Web of Science. We did say Publons at one point in the presentation, but it is Web of Science now. I forget the full name of the, it's Web of Science Reviewers something.
Reviewer recognition.
Thank you. Yeah. So we do partner with them, and you would be able to get credit with them. Is anyone else seeing some questions that we want to answer live, or Eva, Muncie, if we missed anything? We thought of anything while we were talking that you'd like to expand on?
Just one thing quickly, because we have such a range of papers. If there's something in a paper that you're not an expert on, it's helpful to mention that in the review, because it helps us get a good range of opinions. And as I said, with the range of topics, it's going to happen. Also, in terms of being selected as a reviewer, having a complete ORCID is really helpful for us. So like all of your academic positions, your publishing history, we can use that alongside the keywords.
Thank you, Eve. And thank you to everybody, first of all, everyone who is joining us today. I think we're ready to wrap up. So a huge thank you to Bailey, Sarah, Eve, and Monsi for your support and for your excellent presentation and your great answers to all of these very challenging questions. And a huge thank you to everybody who's asked these questions. I think it's a really nice way for us to have an open discussion. And I'm so happy that you could have joined us today to have that. So to flag a couple things that are upcoming. We do run another webinar series at Sage called How to Do Research and Get Published. I believe that some of you in the chat have mentioned that you're familiar with it. I'm flagging that we do have some upcoming webinars that may be of interest. So we have a webinar tomorrow all about quantitative methodology. We have a webinar at the start of May about doing research in a digital world, and then one in June about writing and consulting article front matter. So lots of going on there, and we would be very happy to have you on those calls in the future. And again, to flag that after this call, I will share with you all of the things that I've already promised. There's a certificate, the slides, the recording, and all of the relevant links that we've discussed in today's call. So again, a huge thank you to our panelists and a huge thank you to all of you for attending, and we hope to see you in a future webinar. Thank you very much and take care.
Thank you.